Vienna in the 1700s was the glittering heart of an empire. A city of 500,000 souls by century's end, where emperors ruled from gilded palaces and church spires pierced the sky. Cobblestone streets wound between Baroque facades, coffee houses hummed with conversation, and the Danube flowed past its ancient walls. It was a city rebuilding itself after siege and plague, transforming fear into grandeur, one monument at a time. In this video, I use modern AI tools to bring historic paintings, engravings, and prints to life, allowing us to shift perspective, change camera angles, and move through the same scenes in ways their original artists never could. We'll walk Vienna's streets as they stood 3 centuries ago, seeing the empire's capital through fresh eyes. First, I want to talk about St. Stephen's Cathedral. By 1700, St. Stephen's Cathedral had already anchored Vienna's skyline for centuries. Its Gothic spire rose 450 feet above the cobblestones, visible from every approach to the city. The cathedral's patterned roof tiles caught morning light, casting geometric shadows across the square below. Inside, vaulted ceilings disappeared into darkness, candles flickering against stone pillars worn smooth by countless hands. The square outside teemed with daily life. Merchants spread fabric and spices on wooden tables. Water carriers balanced yokes across their shoulders. The smell of roasting chestnuts mixed with horse manure and incense drifting from the cathedral doors. Beggars clustered near the entrance, calling to well-dressed burghers stepping down from carriages. But the crowds brought danger too. Pickpockets worked the press of bodies. Fights broke out over disputed sales. And in times of unrest, the square became a gathering point for angry mobs, their voices echoing off the cathedral's stone face. The church authorities kept armed guards at the doors during tense periods. St. Stephen's was Vienna's spiritual centre, the seat of the archbishop and the site of imperial ceremonies. When Leopold I was crowned Holy Roman Emperor in 1658, the cathedral rang with Te Deums. Every Easter and Christmas, the Habsburg court processed through its aisles, reminding the city who ruled by divine right. The cathedral survived the Turkish siege of 1683, though Ottoman cannonballs scarred its walls. Over the following decades, Baroque altars replaced medieval ones, softening the Gothic severity with gold leaf and marble. The building adapted, as Vienna itself did, to new tastes and new times. Remarkably, St. Stephen's still dominates Vienna's first district today. The same spire, the same worn steps, the same bells ringing over a vastly different city. This view shows the Hofburg Palace in the early 1700s, the sprawling residence of the Habsburg emperors. Wings and courtyards spread across the city's heart, a maze of power built over centuries. The Swiss Gate stood as its oldest entrance, a Renaissance arch where guards in imperial livery checked every visitor. Beyond it, the palace complex housed throne rooms, chapels, stables and apartments for hundreds of courtiers. The courtyards buzzed with controlled chaos. Servants hurried between kitchens and staterooms carrying silver trays. Diplomats in French wigs waited for audiences. Horses clattered across cobblestones as carriages delivered ministers and generals. The air smelled of wax polish, wood smoke, and expensive perfumes masking less pleasant odours. Tension ran through every corridor. Court factions schemed over appointments and inheritances. A misplaced word could end a career. Foreign ambassadors watched each other, reporting rumours back to Paris, Madrid, and Constantinople. And always, the threat of assassination lingered. Guards patrolled constantly, and tasters tested the emperor's food. The Hofburg was the nerve centre of an empire stretching from Belgium to Transylvania. Decisions made in its chambers sent armies marching, shaped alliances, and determined the fate of millions. Emperor Leopold I ruled from here until his death in 1705, followed by Joseph I and then Charles VI, each adding their mark to the palace. By mid-century, Maria Theresa began modernizing the complex, adding new wings in the Baroque style. She transformed medieval chambers into elegant salons where Enlightenment ideas cautiously entered Habsburg circles. The palace grew as Vienna grew, always adapting. Today, the Hofburg remains Austria's official residence, though now housing a president rather than an emperor. The same courtyards echo with different purposes. By 1710, the Graben had become Vienna's most fashionable street. The name meant ditch, recalling the Roman fortification that once ran here, but no trace of military function remained. Instead, elegant townhouses lined both sides, their Baroque facades freshly painted in cream and gold. Shop windows displayed silk, porcelain, and books imported from across Europe. Wealthy Viennese promenaded here in the afternoons. Ladies in wide skirts and powdered hair walked slowly, followed by servants. Gentlemen in embroidered coats paused to gossip and conduct business. Street musicians played violins and flutes, hoping for coins. The smell of fresh bread wafted from bakeries, mixing with cologne and the earthy scent of the fountain in the square's centre. But beneath the elegance lay constant friction. Shopkeepers competed ruthlessly, sometimes sabotaging rivals. Debts and disputes ended in shouting matches. And the city watch regularly cleared away beggars and vagrants, maintaining the street's respectable image through force. Class divisions were visible in every interaction, every bow, every refused handshake. The Graben represented Vienna's economic vitality. Trade routes converging on the city brought wealth that merchants displayed here. Guild regulations controlled quality and prices, but also limited who could sell what and where. The street was capitalism constrained by medieval tradition, gradually loosening. The devastating plague of 1679 had killed thousands, leaving the street eerily empty for months. In gratitude for its end, Emperor Leopold I commissioned the Plague Column, completed in 1693, a towering Baroque monument to divine deliverance. It still dominates the Graben centre. Today, the Graben remains one of Vienna's premier shopping streets. The same route, the same elegant curve, now lined with modern boutiques beneath historic facades. This view shows the Peststuhl, the Plague Column, rising from the Graben's centre like a marble prayer frozen in stone. Completed in 1693, it reached skyward in spiralling Baroque excess, clouds and angels carved in white marble, saints interceding, and at its peak the Holy Trinity watching over a city that had nearly died. The plague of 1679 had been merciless. Bodies piled in carts, entire households went silent behind locked doors. The smell of death and burning filled the summer air. Survivors walked empty streets wearing vinegar-soaked cloths over their faces. Nearly a third of Vienna's population perished in those terrible months. Emperor Leopold I had fled to Linz with his court, leaving the city to face its nightmare alone. When the dying finally slowed, he returned and ordered this monument, both thanksgiving and guilt. The best sculptors in the empire worked for years, carving suffering into beauty, trauma into triumph. The column became a gathering point. People touched its base for luck, prayed before its saints, met in its shadow. But it also served as a reminder of vulnerability, that plague could return, that God's favour was never guaranteed. The wealthy funded masses at nearby churches. The poor simply remembered the friends they'd lost. The monument represented Vienna's resilience. After plague came recovery, then growth. The city rebuilt stronger, richer, more determined to prove its survival meant something. Art, architecture, and ambition poured into the decades that followed. The Peststuhl still stands exactly where Leopold placed it. Tourists photograph it now, mostly unaware of the mass graves beneath Vienna's beautiful streets. By 1700, Schönbrunn Palace was still more dream than reality. The site, once a hunting lodge destroyed by Ottoman invaders in 1683, lay southwest of the city walls. Emperor Leopold I commissioned Johann Bernhard Fischer von Erlach to design something magnificent, a rival to Versailles that would proclaim Habsburg glory. Construction began in 1696 but proceeded slowly. Scaffolding rose across the grounds. Masons shaped stone blocks while carts hauled materials from quarries. The palace would eventually hold 441 rooms, but in these early years only the foundations and first walls stood. The air rang with hammers and saws, the smell of fresh mortar and cut wood drifting across muddy grounds. Funding was the constant problem. Wars against France and the Ottomans drained imperial coffers. Work stopped and started depending on available silver. Labourers went unpaid for months, sometimes rioting at the gates. Architects revised plans downward, making the palace grand but not as impossibly vast as first imagined. Yet Schönbrunn represented Habsburg ambition. While war tested the empire's borders, this palace declared permanence, culture, civilization. The gardens alone would cover hundreds of acres, mathematically precise, nature bent to imperial will. The message was clear: the Habsburgs would endure. By mid-century under Maria Theresa, the palace finally neared completion. She made it her summer residence, filling its rooms with children, courtiers, and the business of empire. The yellow facade became synonymous with Habsburg power, the colour still called Schönbrunn yellow today. The palace survives as one of Vienna's most visited sites. The same grounds, the same geometric gardens, now welcoming millions where once only emperors walked. This view shows a Viennese coffeehouse around 1720, a new institution taking root in the city's social life. After the Turkish siege of 1683, legend says fleeing Ottoman soldiers left behind sacks of coffee beans. Enterprising Viennese learned to brew the bitter drink, softening it with milk and sugar to suit local tastes. The coffee houses were modest at first. A few tables and chairs, newspapers hung on wooden rods, windows looking onto the street. Patrons sat for hours, reading, arguing, conducting business. The smell of roasted beans filled the room, mixed with pipe tobacco and the yeasty scent of fresh pastries. Waiters in long aprons moved between tables, delivering ceramic cups and glasses of water. These establishments became Vienna's living rooms. Merchants met clients here instead of in offices. Intellectuals debated philosophy and politics. Composers scribbled music on napkins. Everyone from nobles to clerks occupied the same space, separated by invisible boundaries of class, but sharing the same tables, the same newspapers, the same addictive brew. But coffee houses also attracted surveillance. Police informants listened for seditious talk. Political discussions could be dangerous when the empire discouraged free thought. Owners walked a careful line between offering space for conversation and avoiding trouble with authorities. The coffee houses represented something new in Vienna, public space that wasn't church or market, neutral ground where ideas mixed more freely than elsewhere in the rigidly hierarchical city. They became laboratories of emerging modernity. Vienna's coffeehouse culture survives today. Many establishments trace lineage back to the 1700s. The same marble tables, the same newspapers, the same hours spent thinking over a single cup. By 1700, Vienna's fortifications remained formidable. The walls and bastions that had stopped the Ottoman army in 1683. The defences ringed the old city in precise geometric patterns, star-shaped bastions jutting outward to create overlapping fields of fire. Brick and earth ramparts rose 40 feet high, thick enough to absorb cannon fire. Soldiers patrolled the walls day and night. Guard towers watched the approaches. The massive gates, Krintner Tor, Steuben Tor, Schotten Tor, controlled all movement in and out of the city. Merchants paid tolls. Travellers answered questions. Suspicious persons were turned away. The gates closed at dusk, trapping everyone inside until dawn. The fortifications shaped daily life. They created crowding within the walls, dense neighbourhoods where buildings pressed together and streets remained narrow. They limited growth and made fire a constant terror. When flames broke out, entire blocks could burn before anyone could respond. The smell of smoke was never far away, yet the walls also represented security. After 1683, when Ottoman forces had besieged Vienna for 2 months, the fortifications took on almost sacred status. The city had held while much of Hungary burned. The walls had saved Christian Europe, or so the propaganda insisted. Veterans pointed out scars in the stone from Turkish cannonballs. By the 1850s, the walls finally came down. Emperor Franz Joseph ordered their demolition, replacing fortifications with the Ringstrasse, a grand boulevard encircling the old city. Progress erased military necessity. Today, the Ringstrasse follows the exact line of those vanished walls. A few bastions survive as parks, gentle reminders of the fortress Vienna once required itself to be. This view shows the Danube flowing past Vienna's northern edge, the wide grey river that connected the city to Hungary, the Black Sea, and Ottoman lands beyond. Barges crowded the water, some floating downstream loaded with grain and timber, others being hauled upstream by teams of horses walking the towpath. The riverbanks hummed with labour. Dock workers unloaded cargo, hauling barrels and crates up muddy slopes. Warehouse workers sorted goods for onward transport. The air smelled of fish, tar and river mud. Taverns lined the waterfront, serving cheap wine and heavy food to bargemen between voyages. But the Danube was also dangerous. Spring floods could rise 20 feet, drowning the lower districts and destroying warehouses. Ice in winter halted all traffic for months. And always there was crime, smugglers avoiding customs, thieves raiding cargo, bodies occasionally floating past, victims of waterfront disputes. The river represented Vienna's economic lifeline. Hungarian wheat fed the city. Wine from Lower Austria reached markets here before distribution across the empire. Luxury goods from Venice and Constantinople travelled this route, enriching the merchants who controlled the warehouses. Controlling the Danube meant controlling trade. The city government taxed every boat, every cargo, creating revenue that funded palaces and churches. When war disrupted the river, Vienna felt it in empty markets and rising prices. The Danube still flows past Vienna, though channeled and tamed by 19th century engineering. The wild river these merchants knew was later split into multiple arms, the main current redirected away from the historic centre. By 1735, the Spanish riding school occupied its purpose-built hall, an architectural jewel dedicated to a single art, the training of Lipizzaner horses in the classical haute cole. The hall's white walls and columns rose around a sand-covered arena. Windows high above let in controlled light. The smell of horse sweat, leather and chalk dust filled the space. Riders in bicorn hats and embroidered coats guided white stallions through precise movements, the levade, the capriole, the piaffe. Each step took years to perfect. The horses lived in stables below, fed on the finest grain, groomed until their coats gleamed. Trainers spoke in quiet voices, using patience where others used whips. The school represented more than horsemanship. It embodied Habsburg ideals, discipline, tradition, perfection through repetition. Only the best riders gained admission. Every movement followed rules established centuries before. There was no room for improvisation, only mastery of the established forms. But maintaining such an institution cost enormously. Breeding Lipizaners, training riders, maintaining the facilities, all required constant funding. Critics questioned the expense when wars needed soldiers and reforms needed money. The school survived on imperial patronage and stubborn tradition. The Spanish riding school declared that Vienna valued beauty and heritage even amid practical concerns. While other cities modernized and industrialized, Vienna maintained its connection to an aristocratic past. The school was living history, performed daily. Remarkably, the Spanish riding school still performs in the same hall today. The same white horses, the same movements, the same commitment to an art form the modern world has mostly forgotten. This view shows a typical Viennese street in the 1740s. Narrow and cobbled, buildings pressing close overhead. Laundry hung from windows. Shop signs swung in the breeze, painted wood announcing bakers, tailors, apothecaries. People crowded the street, a servant carrying bread, a priest hurrying to a sickbed, children playing with hoops, a sedan chair carried by two sweating men. The sounds layered together, wooden wheels on stone, a blacksmith's hammer, church bells marking the hour, vendors calling their wares. The smells shifted constantly, fresh bread from one doorway, chamber pots being emptied from another, horses passing, coal smoke from chimneys above, Daily life meant constant negotiation. Neighbours knew everything about each other. Privacy barely existed. Arguments erupted over noise, smells, blocked passages. The city watch tried to keep order but was undermanned. Most disputes settled themselves through exhaustion or compromise. These streets also saw violence. Thieves operated after dark. Drunken brawls spilled from taverns. Fires started in kitchens and spread through wooden beams. Disease moved house to house, killing indiscriminately. Living here meant accepting risk as normal. Yet community thrived in these crowded conditions. People helped neighbours in crisis, guilds supported members' families, churches provided charity. The street was both threatening and nurturing, depending on the day, the hour, the luck. Many of these streets survive in Vienna's first district, the routes unchanged even as buildings were rebuilt in later centuries. Walk them today and you follow paths trodden by those long-gone Viennese. Standing here 3 centuries later, the past feels closer than we expect. These weren't just streets and buildings, but living spaces where people loved, fought, worked, and died. The Vienna we see in old engravings was someone's ordinary Wednesday, their daily walk to market, their view from a window. AI lets us move through those frozen moments, seeing around corners the original artist couldn't show. But the real magic is in recognizing that we're not so different from the people who walked these cobblestones. If there's another city, another moment, another scene you'd like to see reconstructed, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what interests you. Again, thank you so much.